So we're all here at WorkHuman, I think. Most, thousands of us here
Yes.
are here because we all recognize that we need to make progress on creating more human, more engaging workplace. So what do you see or have you seen through your work with clients is the biggest challenge they're feeling or facing to engagement right now, or to meeting that goal?
I think their biggest challenge happens to be management, because I work with small businesses. I don't work with any organizations that are more than 1,500 employees. And so for the HR department of 1 or 2 or 3, it's, we hear all this great stuff about employment engagement, but what are we going to do about that? How are we going to be able to actually get buy-in from management to say, this is what we need to do? And so what I do is focus on, well, this can be something that you can use to sell from a compliance perspective. Because if we have employees engaged, then we don't necessarily have the same kinds of concerns about harassment and whistleblowing, those kinds of things. Engaged employees want to make the work better, so they want to tell us when there are problems, including things like harassment. So
I love that. Well, and it's important to note that the work you do, you are a lawyer.
Yep, I suffer from law degree.
And so you advise around that. So the idea of engagement as compliance is a really interesting perspective. I'll be honest, as someone who is any personality profile I've ever taken is like I'm nonconformist, noncompliance.
Yes.
And so that sounds like, initially when I feel it, it sounds like, oh my God. But totally get it. So what does that look like? How is that, as you've advised, like, can you talk about where your clients have been able to do that or how they've been able to make progress?
I think one way we've really focused in on it is that middle manager, and starting with the middle manager of how do you make sure that your people feel heard and that they feel like they can bring things forward. And those are 2 big components for me from a engagement perspective,
Sure.
because if they're doing that, they care enough about being at work. They want to make things better. So we start with, okay, managers, how do we communicate? How do we show someone that you are valued? I want to see you. I want to know when you're having problems. So I start with, okay, managers, we're going to teach you to do 2 things. 1, ask, how are you doing? And mean it, not just the Midwestern, hey, how you doing? I'm fine. Like that kind of thing, like actually mean it.
Right.
And then say, how can I help you do better? Or what do you need from me? Those kinds of questions. If they ask those 2 questions, we start seeing lower turnover, we start seeing higher productivity, but it takes a while to get people into that practice.
Sure.
And from an employee perspective, to actually be willing to share, like
Right.
know that the manager is asking you this genuinely, right?
Right.
Like you really do want to know how I'm doing. You really do want to know where things are going wrong. And so that takes time and practice, and it can be a really hard thing to overcome, but if we do it with enough practice, we'll get there.
Stay at it. It sounds so simple, right? Sounds so simple. It doesn't seem like something we should have to teach.
Right.
But certainly do have to do that. I'm curious, you have to, when you're doing, like, whether that's training or you're coaching this, you have to meet resistance. Like, what is some of the ridiculous resistance that you hear from managers for why they don't want to do this, and how do you push past that? How do you overcome that?
The first step is, well, of course I do that.
Right.
Why do I have to do that? Why do I waste time on this kind of thing? And when was the last time someone actually asked you how you were doing? Not just, your wife in the morning, your husband in the evening, like not just those everyday kind of throwaway questions, but when was the last time someone asked you that question? And the reason I start with middle managers is because they are often the ones that don't get seen the most. And so it's easy for them to, or it's easier, not easy, but easier for them to grasp yeah, I get it. If somebody asks me that question, it makes more sense. So when I love that employee engagement starts from the top. I get the whole spiel, but I think the biggest impact we have is with middle management, and that's why we start there.
Agreed. So how long, that's a really good point, because when we do talk about this, as we've had conversations, there's a lot of debate over, does it have to start at the top, or what is the role of middle management? And middle management gets beat up oftentimes because it kind of comes from both directions for them. How long can you sustain this, though? So if you go in and you teach the middle managers, like, you need to be asking how you are and asking what I can do to help. But if you don't get the leaders on board, once they recognize the power in that and nobody above them is doing it for them, doesn't that start to break down at some point?
Yes, but we can start showing results from middle managers doing it. We can start seeing lower use of sick days. We can start seeing some of the metrics that we're looking for, and we can say, see, this is what we've accomplished in this. And sometimes the rollout, it depends on the organization. When I'm working with an organization that has 150 employees, this rollout can be relatively quick. Right. Bigger employers take a longer time, but we can start to see, like, are we going to be able to do this on a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day, 6-month kind of thing? And we can start showing that incremental progress. And we can also say, hey, middle manager, can you explain to this upper level manager why this was important to you? What did you see as a difference? And that really does then go, oh, I like this. Yeah, this is not hard.
Right.
Case cheap. Like, let's keep doing this.
So it's like we always talk about rolling things out, which usually rolls downhill, but this is sort of a roll it up, which is a very cool kind of, once you see it, you start to believe it. Last question for you. It's kind of a favorite question. I have a love-hate relationship with the practice of management in general. And so I'm handing you a magic wand, and you can wave this magic wand and take a practice or a mindset of management and make it extinct starting now for 2019 going forward. Which one do you pick?
Complaints are bad. I want that gone. I want this idea that when somebody brings forth an issue, that is a bad thing. I want it absolutely out of our practice, out of our mindset, because I'd rather have people bringing me complaints, even if it's, oh, the carpet isn't cushy enough, or, the break room doesn't have the right croissant. I don't care, because if we welcome all of that to come to us, we're going to hit pay dirt on the big one at some point. And even if we can't address everything, we can say, thank you so much for bringing this forward. There was just a great article in the Harvard Business Review about organizations that actually have things coming forward do better, and that so goes against this idea that, well, we don't have any complaints, so things must be going great. No, that's the opposite. I want to hear from when there are concerns, down to the biggest thing, or from the biggest thing to the littlest thing that we have.
Because the complaints are there. It's just a matter of whether you know about them or not.
And if they're not coming to you, then your people are afraid to tell you stuff. And so I want that idea that we should encourage those kinds of conversations.
And I would guess, have you seen too that when they are willing to bring complaints forward and they start feeling comfortable with that, they also start bringing forward ideas and suggestions and all sorts of other positive stuff?
Because if you've welcomed it, they're going to be more innovative. They're going to feel like they can be more creative. So,
awesome. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.